So to answer, oh, you try here. You want me to turn it around, please?
No, sir. Thank you.
So to answer your question, this is for community of business owners at different levels. So level one are the solopreneurs who are just kind of starting out the journey. The other is what I call entrepreneurs who have reached a place where they've got managers and they want to grow and take the business to the next level. And the third are the senior, business owners who either inherited the business or they've grown to a level and moving forward.
Right.
And all of them, it's so if I look at the work that you're actually doing, there's something below the surface that's very, very powerful. And what's really below the surface is it's about how do you access jungle-like cat's presence. And when you're in that moment, when you see the opportunities, threats, resources, weaknesses, strengths, and then you're able to take that call, what you bring to that moment, the richness that you bring to the moment requires an emptying. So that's what this conversation is about.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to kind of for these different audiences, we'll do
Sure.
a few very short things.
No problem. Are we all on?
Everyone,
Yes, mic'd up,
Yay.
not recording.
Lumix cameras are so great. I got one.
yes.
Really.
Can we do a mic check, please?
Mic check.
Yeah, 1 to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Perfect, thank you. That.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, now 1, 2, 3, 4 like that.
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7,
8,
9.
10.
Nice.
You
Okay.
all set?
Yeah, you want to start?
Yes?
Is there anything you want to say before?
No, we're done. We're cool. We're just going to talk and then you guys are going to make us look good on camera, right?
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you recording on that phone?
Yes, it's ready.
Is it recording?
Yes. Ready to go?
Ready? Phone's on silent. Everything. Awesome.
Where's my phone? Is it on silent?
Yeah.
Can you just put it away in the, just in case it,
Should make sure mine's off too. Oops.
good? David Allen, the world authority on productivity and the creator of the amazing Getting Things Done. What a privilege and what an honor, sir, to have you visit our center.
Thanks for the invitation, Roger.
So, we are building a community of business owners, helping them to support each other, to grow, because it gets lonely at the top. And as people start engaging, the operating principle that you discovered and which you have shared so eloquently is that the mind is not designed to store things, it's designed to process things. So what we are doing here is we are creating the conditions for the business owners in small groups to unpack what's going on in their mind into a safe conversation. And when they unpack it in the safe conversation, now themselves and the other people around them now have access and they can process what they're doing. So with the result that, the last 5% of whatever it is that they can't really share, and that's why the experience is lonely at the top, they're now able to share with people and kind of reach a place where they're becoming more and more present to what the opportunities are, the threats are, the resources, strengths, weaknesses, and take those calls. Now, from your whole experience, David, if you can just kind of share, the background and what would really kind of take this to the next level for all of us.
Sure. Well, years ago I discovered the strategic value of clear space.
Right.
If there's no distraction and you're present with whatever it is you're doing, you'll do it better, more elegantly, more creatively. So the whole idea of being able to externalize your thinking is a first step. And so wonderful that you've created an environment where people can start to identify what has their attention. See, if I walked into a group, I would just say, who's got their attention on something? And once you identify what that is, there's 2 or 3 other steps you need to go through. Once you identify what that is, there are 2 or 3 other steps that you need to go through. Once you identify what has your attention, then there is a clarification process that needs to happen, which is, okay, how would I get that off my mind? So my challenging question to all of your business owners would be, what's on your mind? What do you need to do to get it off your mind? Because there's an inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done.
Right.
So you can pretty much bet the most productive people are the people with the clearest heads. And so the way you get a clear head is not by meditating or drinking. I mean, those do what they do, but they don't really get something that you've got attention on off your mind and get it appropriately engaged. See, getting things done is not as much about getting things done as it's about being appropriately engaged with your life. Are you appropriately engaged with your business? Are you appropriately engaged with your family? Are you appropriately engaged with your dog? Are you appropriately engaged with your health? What does appropriate engagement mean? It means I've identified something that's maybe not on cruise control or not on automatic, and I've determined what's the desired outcome that I'm committed to achieve or accomplish or experience, and how would I start moving toward that? How would I start to engage toward that appropriately? So you don't actually need to finish what has your attention to get it off your mind and to get clear, but you do need to identify it, clarify desired outcomes, define next action steps, and then park those reminders in some trusted place that you will see at the right time. That actually is what gets it off your mind. So that's kind of the long, short story of what I spent the last 35 years sort of uncovering and defining and then helping thousands of people implement that, which is that algorithm. What's got my attention? Desired outcome, next action, trusted system, park it. And then engage with that in some appropriate way. That then frees you up to be a lot more creative, strategic, loving, present, whatever it is that you want. It's really about creating space.
In a certain sense, this sounds a little counterintuitive because, productivity and producing results kind of has a connotation of I got to be really focused, I got to have a lot of things, my projects, my priorities, all of that. And the more concentrated and focused I am, kind of suggests to me that I'm really engaged in something very creative, versus, what you're offering, and what you're offering is for you to become productive, get to a place where all of that is parked in whatever appropriate way, so that you can then deal with what needs to be dealt with in the moment in a relaxed with a more sort of focused way.
Exactly. Well, you do need to be able to concentrate and to focus, because I'm not talking about some sort of lazy back, not doing anything. I need to be able to focus, but to your point, and to the point of this methodology, it's a lot easier for me to put the kind of focus I need on my budget, on my hiring, on my business plan, on my whatever it is, as long as I can park everything else in some appropriate place. Not only that, your ability to concentrate is going to a large degree, be based upon your ability to relax.
Yes.
And new science, new cognitive research is basically, if you're not taking a nap every afternoon, at least 20 minutes, if not 90 minutes, you're probably not going to optimize your cognitive ability. If you're not getting at least 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night, your brain is not refreshing itself appropriately. And so you need to be able to then stop at any point in time and do nothing. And your ability to actually do nothing is, to a large degree, how mature you are with this methodology. It doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It means that doing nothing like that allows the brain to reintegrate and adjust. That's why sleeping on something oftentimes gives you the solution in the morning, because sleeping on it is the best way to stop that kind of concentration and let the brain do its work. So there's a lot of new cognitive science that's basically validated what I figured out 30 years ago, and just, I just learned it on the street. I learned, that how powerful this really was, to be able to have a quiet mind so that you could then focus it, appropriately.
So when I look at your journey, in the early part where, over 35 different professions by the time you were 35.
Jobs, I wouldn't call. Some of them were one-nighters, that was all. But yeah.
But then, that sort of suggests to me a very robust engagement with life, and kind of looking eyeball to life, and then from there sort of figuring it out. So could you just share with us, in that whole phase about 30 years back, how this process started, and what are the tenets of getting things done,
Sure.
which kind of then would get people to really look at that which is transparent for them. They're not even aware that they need this,
Sure.
Yes.
Well, as I say, I fell in love with clear space, and one of the ways that I did that was I got a black belt in karate when I was in my 20s. And in the martial arts, at least at the higher levels of training, there are a lot of meditative kind of practices. There may be a spiritual component, but there's a very practical component. If 4 people jump you in a dark alley, you do not want 2,000 unprocessed emails somehow hanging in your psyche. You need to be clear, you need to be clear, you need to be clear. And so that ability to be able to focus rapidly and to refocus rapidly was something I tasted in the martial arts. Then when and also my own meditative and spiritual practices, which I've been doing for 50 years. And that, as I began to get into the professional world and my world got more complex, I saw how quick it was to screw up clear space because of how many plates you have start spinning in the air. And as you get more senior and more responsible, you got a lot more ambiguous things that are not clear that could probably take up a lot of brain space. So I said, how do I somehow keep the professional world growing and getting more complex and keep the clear space? And that's where I got very hungry to find out what these techniques were. And I had several mentors that taught me various pieces of this. But to the point of what is the methodology, it's actually pretty simple. It's a 5-step process about how you get anything clearer and more under control. First of all, you capture things that have your attention. You clarify exactly what they mean to you and what you're going to do about them, if anything. You then have some sort of a trusted system and an organizational tool to manage the things you can't finish in the moment, that holds the context and the content of all of your commitments at multiple levels. Then you build a reflection process about all of that on some consistent basis. So then step 5 is you engage, with the trust that now I've looked at all of that, here's the thing to do, as opposed to driven by latest and loudest and hope that was the right thing to do. So it's just making it a lot more conscious process. of how you do what you do. So there's capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. That's how you get your kitchen under control, how you get your company under control. It's how you get your consciousness under control.
So, the mastermind process is amongst the most powerful processes for people to really get their projects, their jobs, their businesses, their companies to the next level. And one of the most successful masterminds in the world today is from the YPO Forum. And what I have discovered that makes it successful is the intersection of a few things. Number one is that they follow a very strict protocol which has been designed. There's confidentiality of the highest order. And the processes are following the principles that you are sharing. It's really about unpacking and putting into the conversation things that are troubling them, and then once they get that release, there's an emotional release, that there's an objectivity that comes in, and then they work from there. So, from a mastermind process, what are your sort of the ideas that people can take their mastermind to the next level?
Well, you've described a very sophisticated and a very powerful process, and being able to externalize it. Many times we don't know what we think until we start to talk about what we think.
Right.
So oftentimes it'll help give you clarity if you just talk to a tree if you thought the tree was listening.
Right.
Right. So having a forum that's safe enough for people to be able to express themselves is terrific, and it is part of this principle that let me externalize this in some way. You are not your work. You
Right.
do work.
Yes.
You're not only your life, you have a life. So it's who's the you behind all of that. And that's the one that speaks. That's the one who thinks. That's the one that actually is the source of your intuitive intelligence. But being able to get to that source is not automatic. I mean, you could spend a whole life, in spiritual practices attempting to find out who that is internally and how do I get to it. But I've discovered over all these years, one of the best ways to get to it is to get around people of like mind and be able to, share and engage with each other appropriately. And then, there's a saying, where two or more are gathered, something bigger shows up.
Right.
And I think that's really true as long as there's trust.
Right.
So.
And then the other elements is balance, which I'm hearing in the background when you're saying, are you appropriately engaged with all the things that are unfolding? Because inappropriate engagement leads to a lack of balance and a lack of freedom. So this kind of a forum process allows people to find where they are inappropriately engaged and then kind of backtrack, find that balance and move forward and get that freedom and the presence in the moment to be able to then tackle all the things that they need to tackle.
Exactly. Well, you don't have to go very far to
Right.
see where to do this. You just notice what has your attention.
Brilliant.
And because usually the things that have your attention are things that are not on cruise control. They're not on automatic. Something about that situation either hasn't been decided, hasn't been determined, or hasn't been organized appropriately yet. That's why it's on your mind. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just an indicator that that's where I need to go. So if your health is on your mind, or your relationship with your life partner is on your mind, or your budget is on your mind, whatever any of those are, if I were coaching you, I would say, well, great, what has your attention? Then we would just identify what that thing is and say, well, what would you like to have true about that? And we identify the desired outcome. And what's the very next step? If you had nothing else to do but to deal with the budget or deal with your health or deal with your partner, if you had nothing else to do but move toward that outcome, where would you go right now? Would you surf the web? Would you make a call? Would you draft ideas? Would you have a conversation? What's the very next thing that you would need to do? If you haven't determined that yet, then you're not yet appropriately engaged with this thing. That's why the next action, which is a core element of the getting things done process, is so powerful, because it grounds all of those things that have your attention. Maybe that's not exactly the best action to take. You'll find out, but you need to engage. Engage with it in some appropriate way. And what's interesting is once you actually start to identify what has your attention, go through this process to get it off your mind, then you discover what really has your attention.
Right.
Which then you get to take this to a more subtle level. Okay, well, great. What would I need to do to get that off my mind? What would I need to do to get that off my mind? Oh, wow. So I think we're a teleological being. I think we're always striving to be more, have more, express more, expand more. And this doesn't get rid of challenges. It allows you to appropriately engage with what that challenge is, as opposed to complain about it or feel the victim of it. So what this does is it really throws you into the driver's seat of your life in a very elegant and sometimes very subtle way.
So as you were speaking, I was visualizing, a process of charge and discharge. So what has your attention, there's a charge. And the moment you identify what's the immediate next step, the first step, there's a discharge that takes place, there's a relaxation, and then you move to the next. Now what has got my attention? Where's the charge? What's the next step? Again, there's a discharge. So it's a charge, discharge kind of a thing, so I think what I'm getting from this whole, the real objective is to get to that space of balance and enough freedom to be then able to appropriately engage with all the resources that we have, with all the 10,000 things that need to be done in a
Sure.
way in which we really get them done.
Exactly. And you can only do one thing at a time.
Right.
Consciously, in terms of conscious attention on anything. You can switch rapidly, but you can only do one at a time, so it's a case of the glass half full or half empty.
Right.
Is the one thing you're doing the exact thing you need to be doing, given why you're on the planet and all your commitments and everything else? Or you're feeling bad that you're not doing whatever all those things are because of what else you're doing. And to your point about balance, I would say what you're really after is to be in your zone,
Right.
where time disappears. Because when time disappears, there is no distinction between personal and professional. There's no balance, imbalance. It's just called what's now, what's now, what's now, what's now. So I've for 35 years, I have not made any distinction between personal and professional. It's just what's next.
Right.
And if you're in your zone, it's all the same. It's just what's next.
So we were in Masai Mara a couple of years back, and one of the things I saw there, all the animals were in the now and just dealing with what they needed to deal with. They didn't have plans, they didn't have the past, the present, and the future.
Sure.
There was a continuity, and I think from there they are able to sort of, in their own way, craft an existence that really works for them. So it seems to me that there is nature, an internal nature, and also all the gazillion busyness that's around us, that how we get caught up and the energies get caught up in all of these different things. So how do we bring all of that back, and what's locking the energy in, job half done, as you said, what's got your attention, and so on and so forth. So, for business owners who are worried about all of these things, there seems to be a principle that they've embraced, and that principle, and they kind of even sort of pride themselves at their ability to multitask. And from what you just shared, it's very, very clear that multitasking or parallel processing versus sequential processing. So the power lies in sequential processing and focusing on one thing, getting that completed, moving forward. So how do we get these very, very busy business owners to really embrace what's the real, approach to productivity, and really, really get things moving, as opposed to spinning the wheels in loose sand?
Well, it's a good question, and the answer comes back to the basics of identifying what are those things they're spinning about. And spin is not very productive. It's really, worry is not productive. If it was, the world would be a lot better because people worry so much. And the world, to your point, the world is not confused. The world's not overwhelmed. It's fine. It's only how we are engaged with the world that creates the sense of overwhelm or sense of confusion. And once you really kind of get this, and once you really start to do this practice on a regular basis, there's a kind of a maybe Zen-like quality where you are even fine with your overwhelm and your confusion.
Right.
You go, it's fine. Especially when you know how to clean it up if you want to. See, the dangerous thing, I sometimes run across this. I've done this for so many years, it's just so habitual in terms of my lifestyle. I give myself the freedom to be spontaneous and let things just all kinds of fall apart because I know I can fix it real fast.
Right.
So I'm not too bothered when I'm overwhelmed or have too many emails or too many whatever. I go, fine, they'll live. People know how to find me if they need me. And, it's one thing at a time, one foot in front of the other.
The other, dynamic that I'm seeing when businesses move from being solopreneurs to getting a team of people around, how do they take their business to the next level after getting this team around? And, from your experience, what's the way in which they can get everybody to focus on, the things that they really need to focus on, as opposed to all the, I'm right, you're wrong, should, must, could, have to, all that stuff. And, really, really providing leadership in that team as opposed to having a bunch of assistants. So it's then the same model where you're a solopreneur, now you're a solopreneur with a bunch of assistants. So in that, what is the immediate next step that they really need to take to move in that direction and move forward?
Well, the real next step is a radical one.
Okay.
What's the purpose of the business? Because that has to be the driver of everything. Once you understand what the purpose of the business is, then what are the roles that need to be filled and the accountabilities of those roles that are going to achieve that purpose. Until you do that, you don't know how to allocate people. You don't know what to do with them. So a solopreneur needs to identify, if they're going to start to expand, they need to identify what are all the different hats they have been wearing. What are all the different roles they have been playing? And once you identify those roles, then you can say, well, which ones of these are you not so good at that would be really great to have somebody handle that role with that accountability? But that's not an easy process. See, our company's been involved in something called Holacracy for 7 years, which is a very, very role-based, purpose-driven way to organize a business. We don't have job titles. We just have roles and accountabilities, and people are identified with that role. And that role has its own purpose and its own accountabilities. And so going through the process of defining that, that's challenging, but necessary if you really want to have clarity organizationally. See, I could be clear, you could be clear, Rajesh, but we get together, boy, you've now expanded exponentially how confusing things can get.
Right.
In terms of what did you agree to, what have I agreed to, what are you accountable for, what am I accountable for, and that becomes a very necessary conversation to then be able to externalize that and become objective about what those things are.
So if you look at, the way people organize, quote unquote, themselves, their businesses, comes from organizational theory. We have an organizational chart, and this person reports to this person, and so on and so forth, which then becomes dysfunctional pretty quick, versus what you are, saying in such an elegant way is that what's the purpose of the business, and from the purpose of the business, what needs to happen, and what are the roles that need to be played, and who's playing that role, and what is his accountability. And if we stay focused with that, with no designations and no clutter of organizational theory, then that kind of just moves things forward. And then from time to time, you can take stock of, has the role shifted? Has the accountability shifted? Are we done with that? Do we need to expand, contract, and mix and match? So, how does one get started on that, David?
I don't know. You just start. I think you need to find good models and good coaches.
Right.
That have been down that road before that can help coach it. We've still using coaches to help our organization, even though we're pretty good at it ourselves. But sometimes you just need an outside view, or you need somebody who has seen multiple ways that this has been handled.
Right.
And that can make you feel okay that you're not totally unusual, that this is going on. Again, great reason for mastermind kinds of groups, so that you find out, oh, they got the same problem and here's how they dealt with it. Not that you would deal with it the same way, but it certainly makes you feel a lot better to understand that these are universal issues that show up just in the nature of that. Interestingly, the same principle about a clear mind. Do you have a clear organization? One way you can start to identify is what has the organization's attention or tension. Where's the tension in the organization? Is the tension on hiring? Is it on compensation? Is it on budget? Is it on vision? Is it on strategy? Where's the tension? What does the organization have its attention on? And then how do I relieve that? What do we need to do to either define a role, change a role, get rid of a role, add an accountability, eliminate accountability? So I think finding good models that you can start to work with is pretty important.
So it's very heartening to hear that an organization which is led by you, that you hire coaches. And, so one of the things that business owners, I'm seeing them in 3 different buckets. Bucket number 1 are people who are clear that working with a coach can help them accelerate their growth. Bucket number 2, don't want to go to a coach, but now they are stuck. And the only way out is to get a coach to move forward. And bucket number 3 is, look, we can't be bothered with coaches. We want to do stuff on our own. And, so what is the way in which one can communicate that, listen, there are these processes that are available. People have been there, done that. And once you work with a coach, you can really move things forward. So, how do you get that?
Well, in the Getting Things Done model that, I've engineered really is just really identifying the multiple levels that we have commitments. And I've identified essentially the 6 horizons that we have commitments about. There's purpose, there's the vision of that purpose being fulfilled, there's the goals and objectives we need to accomplish to make the vision happen, there's all the accountabilities and roles that need to be maintained so that we've got a healthy enterprise. Then there's all the projects we have to finish about all those things, and then there's all the action steps we need to take. I couldn't get it any simpler than that. So you have all of those multiple levels there. The reason I say that is because if people think they don't need any help, they're not playing a big enough game.
Wow.
Come on. I've had people tell me that if your business hasn't set a goal that would take at least 100 years to manifest, you may not be playing a big enough game. Now, there's nothing right or wrong about that. I wouldn't make that a judgment that people, maybe they're fine exactly where they are. So I'm not going to try to poke somebody and tell you you're not fine.
Yeah.
It's just I'm suggesting that if people really start to focus on their vision, God, my vision and purpose really is that we create a world where there are no problems, there are only projects. I need all the help I can get. Right? We barely started. So I got a big game. And so anybody that can help. That's why I'm very happy to talk to you, talk to people about what this methodology is. There may be somebody out there that'll hear it, that it'll improve their condition. So that's what I'm about. So if somebody is not interested in any help, they're either, that's fine with me. It's called get to a no as fast as you can.
So beautifully said. So it's the context of your life, really. If the context is small and you can manage it, then you don't need any help. But if your context is really huge. And then this whole thing of how do I build my competencies, how do I get productive, my efficiencies, my effectiveness, all of these kind of conversations begin to open up. And then very quickly, you really begin to realize that you're at the mercy of the Peter principle, that you've now risen to your level of incompetency, and then you want to move forward, which is, people really think that that's quote unquote a bad thing. But then I kind of think, when I was in the 7th standard and I finished my curriculum, I wrote my exam, I was promoted to the 8th standard, I experienced myself as capable but not competent to write the 8th standard exam. I had to go through the whole curriculum to really, gain competency. So I think, this whole process of what, so there's a doingness that I'm hearing in your work, what I've been observing, which is the getting things done, follow the steps. But at the end of the day, it's the whole beingness that's getting freed up. There's presence, and in that presence, the ability to relate to human beings, to relate to whatever your situations are. So in this kind of a space of, what's your simple, elegant model that becomes aspirational for people, from your own experience? Because at the end of the day, as a world authority in your subject, there is people, they aspire to something which is very simple. So how would you articulate or describe that?
Well, it really comes down to the essence of productivity, which is what are you trying to accomplish, and then how do you move forward to make that happen? Right. So where are you going? What's the next step? Outcome and action of the zeros and ones, really, about what do you need to do? Now that can become quite complex and subtle in terms of what do you want?
Right.
What do you want to experience? What do you want to have? What do you want to be? How do you want this to show up, at some point? And then how do I move forward toward that? Interestingly, over the years, I've found people resist those two things like the plague. If you look at most people's to-do lists, they're things like mom or bank.
Right.
You say, well, mom, yeah, you probably had one, so why is it on the list? Oh, her birthday's coming. Great. What are you going to do about mom's birthday? Oh, I don't know. Yeah. So they've identified something that's got their attention, but they're not appropriately engaged with mom and birthday yet. Mm-hmm. They have to decide they're going to give her a party. What are they going to do? And if so, what's the next step? Oh, I need to call my sister, see what she thinks about mom's birthday. Great. Now you're appropriately engaged. So it really has to do with this outcome and action thing is really the zeros and ones, but we're not born doing that. You actually have to learn that process. It's a cognitive muscle you have to train. And interestingly, why it's so challenging for people, I think, I discovered recently, is that those two things use two different parts of your brain. The vision part uses the forebrain, that part of you, the frontal cortex, where it sees the picture, it sees the image, it sees the desired outcome. But the limbic part is the one that actually executes, and it's right. Actually it gets you going. It gets you active. That's taking activity. The interesting thing is once you've trained yourself to think that way and to engage with your world that way, then you start to experience the beingness. What seems to be true, at least from my experience, is that on this planet and this material world, we're teleological, and the way to be is to do. Right. So the people that I know that I would say are the most being kind of people are high doers. Right. They really are. And it's not about sweat or work harder or spend more time. It's about I'm appropriately engaged in what I'm doing. Because even when I meditate, that's not going unconscious. It's a very conscious process. I'm very focused on meditating. Or I'm very focused on taking a nap. See, there's a power nap, and then there's a nap to avoid your life. The right. Power nap just looks at everything and says, time for a nap. And out. Or time for a beer. Or time to work on the strategic plan. Or time to do this, that, or the other. Again, it comes back to when you have that sense of just being present, there's no distinction between being and doing.
You presence this distinction of being appropriately engaged in different ways. Could you share, this distinction in a way in which people can really get what is this thing called being appropriately engaged? Because to my mind, am I appropriately engaged with someone versus am I appropriately engaged with a project? But you use it with this appropriately engaged with so much of flexibility that I'm trying to sort of really distinguish it for myself from the way you are distinguished.
Well, come on, Rajesh. You have a lot of things that are not on your mind right now.
Yes.
Why? Because you're appropriately engaged with them. It's that simple.
Right.
That's simple. And I don't care how you get it off your mind. I say, what do you do? What do you need to do to get it off your mind? Maybe you need to delegate it to somebody. Maybe you need to just go, screw it, I'm just not going to bother about it. If it shows up, I'll just let it show up. And you have no more attention on it. You just renegotiate the agreement with yourself. I don't need to do anything about that. That's appropriate engagement. But it's actually going through this same clarification process. What is it? Is it actionable, yes or no? If it's not actionable, then it's either trash or it's reference material or it's something you just might want to do later but not now. And if it is actionable, then, okay, what's the next action? And if one action won't finish it, what's the project? What's the outcome? Right. So it's this, I just discovered that algorithm. That's how you get appropriately engaged with it. But it's highly flexible. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put that on someday maybe. Or, I'm just going to make a call about that and see what happens. It's as flexible as life is. But the principle is steady and stable. There's no, if you get something off your mind, really get it off your mind, get it under cruise control, you will have done this.
So appropriately engaged and cruise control go together.
Mm-hmm.
Inappropriately engaged and having things on your mind, those are, that kind of is the distinction, really.
Yeah, if on your mind, by the way, is just doing creative developmental thinking, and that's just fun, and just many times I'm just grazing. Look at that, there's a clock over there. Hey, they're filming this. That's a great camera. I'm just grazing.
Right.
But if I look at it and I go, I want that camera, but I can't buy it right now, then I'm going to be pulling out my little pen and paper and writing that down. Research Lumix cameras.
Right.
Because now I'm appropriately engaged with it because it was on my mind. If I didn't write that down, there's a part of me going, David, you made a commitment. David, you made a commitment. David, you made a commitment. And this thing is going to start buzzing inside of my head somewhere, right? And so I just learned that's what I need to do is to capture. And then later on, I'll clarify whether that was a dumb idea or not, but I'm actually going to do anything about it. And if I am, then what would doing look like? So,
and I think the key distinction that I just sort of got in this moment is that from your example of that camera, and you say, I want it, but I can't afford it, and you take it out, you don't write camera, you said research the camera, which means that what's the next step I'm going to take about it, which is actionable, and the moment I put it there, now I can let it go.
Well, it could be. For the most part, I would just write camera because it's fast.
Right.
Because I don't want to stop what we're doing here.
Sure.
And so I just grab a thing, but I will, sooner than later, throw that little note into my own in tray, pick it up and go, okay, what is this? And then I may come up with a project called research, R&D camera. Right, for which I'll have a next action, to your point.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes you may make that action decision immediately.
Right.
No need to hold back on that. But it's nice to have the freedom to just capture like crazy. That's why in your mastermind groups, you want people to have the freedom to just get anything off their mind without having it perfect or having figured out what they're going to do about it.
Right.
But don't let it lie fallow. That's then where you need to go through the clarification process. Okay, now what do you need to do about that? But you need the freedom to identify anything. I probably throw away 80 or 90% of my notes. I just don't know which 80 or 90% those are right now, because when I'm having the idea, of course it's brilliant, because I had the idea.
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning and go, who are you kidding? Yeah. What a dumb idea. So you want the freedom to be able to do that. That's why these are two very different processes, but it's a holistic model. I need the freedom to just go, bleh, and then I need the discipline to go, what does the bleh mean? What am I going to do about that? What commitment, if any, am I making about this? And what would doing look like?
One of the things that I'm discovering, is working with business owners is, asking them to identify the emotion and what is the memory that's associated with that emotion. And when they start doing that, there seems to be some sort of unraveling that takes place for themselves as well as the other people, where there's no advice, there's no leading, there's nothing. And then from there is now from what you just said, it's kind of becoming clear for me that what that process does is ultimately gets them to identify what's the very next action they can take. Mm-hmm. And once they've got that clarity, that emotion, the negative emotion, the charge dissipates.
Sure.
The situation still remains the way it is, but then they move forward from there.
Exactly.
So I think that's the missing.
Yeah, what my process, the getting things done process, doesn't really deal with the emotional things directly.
Right.
It has a huge emotional impact, to your point, once you get a lot clearer about that. Right. Interestingly, we have a partner now delivering our work in South Africa, and he is a practicing psychotherapist and psychologist, as well as now a GTD trainer. And so I asked him, I said, so tell me about the relationship that you see between therapy and getting things done. He said, well, therapy often addresses things that getting things done doesn't address directly. He said, but once people start to practice the getting things done methodology, it makes them much clearer about what their issue really is.
Right.
Because a lot of people, one negative thing that you're not appropriately engaged with can color your whole life gray, especially if it's an important area. Right. Your whole life will feel confusing and overwhelming if you're got a major financial problem or a major relationship problem or a major any kind of problem makes your whole life feel like a problem, as opposed to that's that specific thing, and it allows us to be able to identify that and isolate what that thing is and how to engage with it. So it was interesting to hear from William, my guy in South Africa, that he found if you haven't done this getting things done, clear your head kind of process, then people are so unclear about what's unclear for them. And it makes it much more difficult to pinpoint what are those emotions about what, and where does that come from.
Yeah, my son Jay is fortunate to go to film school starting January. He's going to Boston to Emerson College. And, every single teacher, professor that he has, I'm sure is clear that they are the only professor that he has to deal with. So they're going to give him a bunch of things to do. So since you're here, it'll be such a blessing if you can, get him focused on how he can organize himself in college, be productive, take in everything that's possible, as opposed to constantly being in that overwhelm kind of phase, which everybody who goes to college does, and then they say, screw it, don't want to do it, that kind of stuff, or really burn themselves to really produce results. So anything that you can
Everything we've just been talking about.
That's basically what it is.
That's it. For a student, it just takes on a little bit of a different flavor, because oftentimes the key to this is the weekly review. The key is once a week, take a look at everything coming toward you, take at everything that's on your plate, and start to identify those things that are projects. They're going to take more than one step to do, and get a sense of the larger gestalt of that. And that's oftentimes what kids don't do. By the way, I don't know if you know, we just published Getting Things Done for Teens.
Right.
And there's no denigration or diminution of the process in the book at all. Right. It has all the sophistication that my book Getting Things Done has. It's just focused. For instance, a CEO coming back from a board meeting still has to empty their briefcase and take all the notes they took, if they took notes, right, and figure out what to do with them. A 9-year-old just needs to empty his or her pack with the stuff that they got from the teacher to find out what the parent has to sign, as opposed to having it disappear in there for 3 weeks. Same principle,
Right.
right? It's just different content, that you'd be dealing with. But it doesn't change the content, whether you're in college or we now have, one of the co-authors of our book for teens is a public school teacher in Minneapolis in the U.S. Right. And he's been teaching 8, 9, and 10-year-olds this getting things done process for the last 3 years. And they get it. It's very easy for anybody to learn, okay, what did I just get in this class?
Right.
What does that mean? What are the action steps I would need to take to move forward this? In college, the problem is once kids leave home, mom disappears as a trusted system.
Right.
So, as we grow, when you were born, you needed help about almost everything, right?
Right.
At some point, you could do some of that yourself, right? But you still needed somebody to cook for you or somebody to tell you how to handle that or whatever. At some point, you kept on taking on more things that you then needed to self-manage as opposed to trusting the people or the environment around you is going to structure it for you.
Right.
So that's why schools, provide a structure in a certain way. But as soon as you leave, depending upon how your secondary education went and how structured or how unstructured it was, and you had to then learn to manage all of your own stuff that way. But as soon as you leave that, if you had a fairly structured, like I did, a very structured high school, as soon as you go to college, it's like, whoa, now you're on your own. And you're going to have to sit down and do this, create your own structures for it. But that's true for anybody. It's like your folk going from solopreneur to, they're going to have to create a structure that's, as opposed to just waking up in the morning and doing what they feel like doing. They're going to have another larger structure to be able to then manage, a bigger enterprise.
The other question that just, in your speaking has come up to me is, I would like to formally introduce getting things done in our community. So what would be the next steps and how do we get that kind of...
Well, the best thing to do if you haven't met him yet is Mohammed, El-Hawa is our partner and master trainer in Egypt, but he has the whole Middle East region. We also have master trainers and partners in Bangalore. What do they call that now?
Bangalore, yeah.
Yeah.
Bengaluru,
yes, in Bengaluru. So they're giving public seminars about this and also doing coaching about this,
Right.
all over the regions in the area. We have people all over the world actually now doing that.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to do it. And of course, if you read English, well, my book's in 30 languages, so whatever language you want. But the book itself is a whole manual about all this, and I wrote a new edition of the Getting Things Done book, a couple of years ago.
Right.
So that's a manual for all this. A lot of people though look at that and they feel a little overwhelmed because
Right.
I put the whole thing in there. Whereas if you meet somebody who's any of our trainers that are really really good, or you hear somebody talk about this, or that's oftentimes a way to experience it, to feel motivated by it, whatever.
So in the last 1 year, my focus has shifted for these business owners. I'm getting them all focused on the fundamental reason why the business is in existence is to generate cash. And they can generate cash if their clients are generating cash or equivalent of cash or proxy of cash. Now, with this sort of central axis, productivity now becomes the key roadblock. And that's the context in which I asked you the question.
Well, I'll sort of challenge that a little bit. I would say that the primary driver of a business is producing value.
Yes.
Because if you want to make more money, produce more value.
Yes. I mean,
and value is a two-way street too. You have to. The person has to perceive there's value to get out of what you're doing, and then you have to create the appropriate exchange.
So our architecture is, generate cash, and that comes from producing value, and we define value as the current state of your client and the after state, and what's the gap, and can you increase that gap so that you create more value, and that is basically what it is about. So I'm weaning them away from the conversation called generate profits, because profit is not an exact science. You can keep changing it by changing so many things, whereas cash is cash. And that kind of seems to get people focused on creating value, as opposed to making all the cosmetic changes to make the profit go up and down, valuation of the stock and this and that, all that stuff.
Sure.
So I think this has been absolutely enriching, brilliant. David, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and share from your vast ocean of experience, which has been kind of diluted in just one drop of being present.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate such a great, this is a fun interview, fun conversation to have.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Gautam just wants you to do two small things for him.
Okay.
One is, that you are in this part of the world, and if you can.
Can I start it again? The recording?
Sure, please. So I'll just share with him what is
I
the.
want to mix this one up.
Yeah, just. Was it good?
Very good. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I feel like 15 just stuff's opening up for me, man.
Yeah.
Whole world
Yeah.
turned upside down.
Yes.
Three,
We good?
and yeah.
So the first thing Gautam is requesting is, if you can, give a message for people in this part of the world on, maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that they can do in a 4 or 5 minute kind of thing, which then he can put out there and, connect, right selection with the audience here and with you in some. That's one. And then the other one is about their new business model, which I've been working with Gautam, and it's basically about creating relationships both ways, where the businesses and the people that he works with as his customers, they want to take their businesses forward. So how can they benefit by getting people such as yourself to come and do, whether it's a keynote or a workshop or a presentation? So what that would do for Gautam is that when he puts it out there, it's again a direct connect between, what you offer. At the same time, it also opens up the business model of bringing, lots of world authorities on different subjects.
Okay.
So these are the 2 pieces that you requested.
Sure. Am I talking to you or am I talking to that?
I think camera would be better, right? What do you prefer?
I don't
It's
care.
up to you.
It's the camera.
Camera? Okay.
That one?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm David Allen, the author of the international best-selling book, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, and I'm the engineer of the methodology known around the world now as GTD. And I'm absolutely delighted to be working with Gautam and the Right Selection crew here in Dubai and actually all over the Middle East as they're representing me for the keynote work that I do or the master classes that I give as well about this methodology. And it's really a fascinating thing to see how global and universal this methodology is. It's really about creating space. How do I create more room in my mind to be more strategic, more creative, more present, more able to really be focused on the things that are most meaningful to me, and that I have the room to focus and the consciousness and the intelligence and the intuition to focus on the most meaningful things. So that's the message that I've developed over the last 35 years as I've been doing this work and spread this around the world. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be working with the Right Selection folks here in the Middle East to start sharing that information, because there seems to be so much growth and so much creativity and I think a real hunger for how to do things better in a more elegant way. Interestingly, those of you who may be listening to this or watching this who are the most productive are probably the people that will be most attracted to this, because in a way it's the most productive and creative and aspirational people and organizations that are most interested in how to do it better, because you already know that systems work, you already know that processes work. There's just new levels that this can be taken to for both individuals as well as organizations by just creating more room to do the meaningful stuff.
Thank you.
And okay, yeah. Do I need to introduce myself again for this? Is it a separate
I
piece?
think it'll come together, or we can, they can splice it. Right. The introduction, no need.
Okay.
Another piece?
Yes.
One of the brilliant things I think Right Selection is doing is working with organizations that want to take themselves to new levels of game and uncover the game, find out best practices for doing that. And a great way to do that is to be able to access, world-renowned resources of people who've been through this game, people who have contributions that can make a real significant difference. I know I continue to go to conferences and meet people and get coached by some of the best in the world, even though I do this work myself as well. So I think if you've got a big enough game going and a big enough vision about where you want to take your organizations, then you're probably, if you're like me, need all the help you can get. And the Right Selection folks have a great menu of really, really great resources to pick from to be able to take that forward to a next step.
From what you just said, I have a request.
Sure.
Could you give a similar kind of message to people who are looking at joining the CBG community, that
Okay.
if your game is big enough and that kind
Sure.
of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And my name is Rajesh.
Hi, I'm David Allen, the author of the international bestseller, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. And I wanted to make a comment about the work that I've heard that Rajesh is doing and the CBG mastermind groups, because this is fabulous stuff. I know for years I've worked around mastermind groups, YPO, and other kinds of groups that have brought together people that need to meet and collaborate with peers, because it's lonely at the top. And if you're trying to run your own organization, whether it's small or you're just starting up or you've even been around for a while, if you want to take the game to a next level, there's nothing better than being able to collaborate with peers, be able to have a forum and a place that you trust, and good coaching that you can get from people who can add perspective to what you're doing. And so gets my big vote that you might want to consider, if you're not involved with it already, to be engaged with Rajesh and the CBG Mastermind forums. Terrific stuff.
Thank you. Do you want to ask a few questions?
5 minutes.
Is it okay?
That's okay with you? Just a quick toilet break. Do you need anything, David?
I don't need anything. I'm fine. Dooby-dooby-doo, be-dooby-doo.
Can I swap with you?
Yeah, I thought you wanted to go to the party.
Dooby-dooby-doo, be-dooby-doo. Tell me your name again. Sorry.
Sky.
Sky. How do you spell it? Just like S-K-Y?
With an E at the end. That's the
Sky.
island in Scotland.
Ah, right.
Scottish mother.
You have a Scottish mother?
Yeah, she named it after the island.
Ah.
Sure.
My wife is Scottish.
Oh, really?
Well, her parents were. They immigrated to
You
the
did?
U.S. after the war. Yes, I have. Not the Sky, but I did we did drive all the way around the island, pretty much all the way around Scotland one time.
Nice. And the islands.
It's a lovely place.
I haven't been. My grandfather was the Scot. He moved to England, to Yorkshire. So whenever I visit, that's where we go.
Right.
2. Yeah, back up. Hoping we don't need
Doobie-doobie-doobie-doobie-doo.
Yes. Audio, everything? So do you want to do this as sort of a question and answer and then a pause, question and answer, that style? Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I won't do an introduction or anything, Jay. I'll just ask a question. David can answer. Yes. Like that. Works? Awesome. You're making me pink.
Skin tone change, right?
Yeah. You'd think I'd have a tan living in Dubai, but we spend all our time indoors because it's so hot. When do you go back home?
Thursday.
Okay. You fly with KLM or Emirates when you come?
Emirates.
Oh,
Here.
yeah.
Usually I KLM most everywhere else.
Yeah. Pretty good.
They're a good airline. I really appreciate it. So is Emirates.
Yeah, Emirates is awesome for economy, for sure.
You want to lose your tie or keep it?
keep it.
Doobie-doobie-doo.
I've got a small little stain on my shirt.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is the job of ties. They're originally invented to stop you dropping your food on your shirt.
So now we know what's on your mind.
Yeah. I need to clear that.
I'll tell you what's on my mind.
Lunch.
Lunch, man.
Yeah.
And where do we take David for? He's not very easy, you know.
No?
Yeah. You ask him what I like everything. So okay.
How much time do you have? 34 minutes.
So we're going to do this as a question, answer, and then a cut, and then another one for social media, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll continue recording.
Yeah, for sure.
What do we want?
Doobie-doobie-doo.
Sky speed.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Awesome. Done.
Do-do-do.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. Audio is
Ah,
recorded.
You speak
Make-
Dutch?
Starting. This is the beginning.
Yeah. Took my uncle 3 years, finally did it. They complain he doesn't speak Frisian now. Okay, good to go?
When you are ready.
David, I'm very interested. The CEOs in our community, getting things done is very powerful for a CEO, somebody that needs a clear mind, has to make decisions every day. Can you share with us some of your experiences of where you've seen a CEO really transform their decision making and the results they're producing by using GTD?
You know, one of my last clients that I worked with actually over a year's period of time, his presenting issue was really interesting. He framed it probably better than almost anybody has ever framed this for me. He said, you know, he's in his third startup, he has his own jet, he's on 5 boards, he teaches entrepreneurialism at a major university. And he said, David, I'm only 47, I feel like I'm just hitting my stride. The problem is I'm up to here, got no more room. So we work to sort of help define what are the things that were taking up that room, and then how do we give him more space to be able to take it to a whole nother level. And people around him too. So, you know, not only him, but his ecosystem around him, as they started to find out how he now was thinking and had clearer space, they had a lot easier way to be able to engage with him and him with them, because things were a lot clearer. They could keep track of things, manage commitments, manage decision making, and just some great opportunities to do that. But it's almost as different as every company and every CEO or every senior person I've really worked with, depending upon what they want. The common denominator is they get more space to be more strategic, more space to see things at a higher horizon on a regular basis, as opposed to too caught up in the weeds, on a day-to-day basis. So that kind of space to be able to just see at a longer game can make a big difference for anybody at that level.
It's interesting, GTD is usually considered as a personal productivity system. Is it something we can use with our teams? Do we need to individually be using the system, or is there a kind of a collaborative way we can use GTD?
Yes.
And can you share something about that with us?
It's really both. No, it was developed as a way to create space for an individual or create more room and to be able to then, all that good stuff. How do I get more control? How do I get more focus? And those are the two key elements of self-management. It turns out those are the two key elements of organizational management, control and focus. Things need to be under control enough so you've got stability to be able to focus on what you need to focus on. If things are out of control, it's very hard to focus. But if you're not focused on the right stuff, it's very easy to lose control. So there's a very tight correlation between control and focus. And the GTD methodology actually works with both. There's 5 steps to how do you get something under control, and there's 6 horizons that we have our commitments. And that gives you then focus and perspective on those things. Turns out that organizations use the same principle or need to use the same principle. If I walked into your organization right now, I'd say, what's got the team's attention? Right? Because it's very easy for things to not be clear organizationally because of the lack of individuals not doing this process. So you still need individual behavior to really make it work, but the principles apply to an enterprise as well as they do to an individual.
I think when we think about focus and productivity, we're often looking at the external factors. So we lock ourselves away in the office, we put headphones on, and we try and control that environment around us. What I like about GTD is it's that internal element. You're focusing on what's in the mind and clearing that. So what would you say are those components of that real focus that we need to bring?
Well, you need to clear up your head so you can focus. You need to make sure you get rid of any of the distractions, anything that keep you from focusing, or any of the things that are clouding up your mind to keep you from focusing on the right stuff. So anything that helps you free up your mind is going to free up your ability to be able to recognize more sensitive, more subtle, intuitive things that you might need to be focused on and where to focus your creativity. So it works in both those ways. It works to both get clarity in your head, but it also then, with that clarity, allows you to recognize what are the things I need to focus on and how to do that.
It seems to me GTD can actually enrich all aspects of our life. So we usually think about it in the work domain. But a common thing that happens with people focused on their business, perhaps they go home and they're not present, and their wife says to them, your mind's always at the office, your kids are there, and you don't get to spend much time with them. How is GTD enriching that other side of our lives?
Well, in one way, I work with the CEO of a major world financial organization, and his presenting issue was, he said, David, when I go home to the weekend with my young kids, I do not want to take the bank with me. Right? So he just wants that ability to be present with your family. That's huge. So anything that's keeping you from being present about anything is going to then increase the quality of your relationships with anybody you engage with. See, GTD affects all of your intersections, moves them all up the food chain. Whether the other person on the other end of the intersection does this or not, but that's another question. But the fact that you are now tracking your commitments, or recognizing that, the fact that you're present in your communications with them, just moves everything in your whole ecosystem really moves up. The bar raises a lot.
So what would you say are what's the first step for somebody who's read the book, they're ready to implement that? What is that first step to get them going?
Go back and read part 2 of the book, which walks you through the specific coaching process. Now, you'd need a couple of days usually, or at least a day and a half of nothing else going on to do that. You're going to get a lot of productive stuff done during those 2 days, but I've written out basically what you do. And quite simply, you just need to get everything out of your head to begin with. You walk yourself through at least the first 3 parts of the 5-step process. That is, capture, clarify, and organize. I need to get everything out of my head that's got my attention, and then I need to go through each one of those individually, decide, is it actionable, yes or no? And if not, toss it, tickle it, or file it. If it is, what's the next action required? Determine that, which if you can do in 2 minutes, you should do right then. If not, you then need to park that somewhere or delegate it if you could delegate it. And if one action's not going to finish whatever this thing is, you have a project, you need to identify that too. So that's the clarification process. What does this mean? What does it mean to me? And then organize. If you can't finish it in that moment, you need to keep track of it and not in your head. Your head's a crappy office. So the whole idea here is to externalize all of those commitments at those multiple levels into some sort of trusted system so that when you go out for errands, you see all the errands you need to run. You may not run them all, but at least you're not missing any that you don't want to miss. And the next time you talk to your life partner, you'll see a list of everything to talk to him or her about. Doesn't mean you'll talk to them about it. You may intuitively say, I think I'll hold on that one, but at least you know exactly what they are and you're feeling comfortable about the content. And that's true for all the stuff that you would then keep track of in your system. So capture, clarify, and organize, that's how you basically implement the basics here of GTD. Then then once you do that, to keep it going, that's then where the weekly review, coming in once a week, you need to refresh the whole thing and get it current and keep it, as opposed to having it go stale on you.
You're talking about getting all of the stuff in our head into an external trusted system. And earlier when we were talking, you shared you had your notebook and you capture in the notebook. Can you share with us what your GTD system looks like?
Well, in a way, it's pretty simple. I use just a plain list manager. We still use Lotus Notes, or now IBM Notes. So I just use the task function inside of Notes. It has all my lists. It has my project list, has my list of stuff to do at the computer, has my errands list, has lists of stuff to talk to my wife about. So all that's just kept in a list manager. It's just in a digital form. I use Evernote as a way to capture a lot of digital just reference information. Have a paper-based reference system as well. Have my own physical in-basket and in-tray that I use more than anybody because I need a place to throw all these notes and all the stuff I collect. So pretty simple. As anybody's system actually can be pretty simple. You just need a good list manager, and you need to be able to just have it all coordinated so you're not double entering something somewhere.
And when you're traveling, you're able to take that system along with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the technology's kind of set up so that I can see my list on my iPhone, I can see it on my iPad, and so it's also on my laptop. But I usually don't need to look at much of any of that because I don't do work on that small screen. Now that's because I'm 72. I guess if I were 12, I could do all that, but no thanks. I'd much rather work on a screen because many times when I'm working, I need to be able to go surf a website real quick. I need to go look at something real quick. So I like to work in a larger real estate when I actually do work. Having a list of errands on my phone is fine. That's nice. So, but again, that's just technology stuff. The principle has been the same. When I first started doing this work 35 years ago, there weren't even paper planners. We were just using file folders with pieces of paper in those folders to do all of this. But the methodology is exactly the same.
I think a nice aspect of GTD is it's kind of lived on as technology has evolved, and that's the simplicity and the beauty of that system. What have you seen in terms of people using GTD with technology, and maybe that creates some complications? Is it simplifying GTD, or is it actually making it more complex for people?
Yes. Both. The bad news about the digital world is it's so cool that it can become a black hole of stuff you've thrown in there. And especially if you're trying to use, like my capture tool is low tech, right? Because this thing needs no batteries, no Wi-Fi, nothing, right? I don't need to click anything to turn it on, right? So capture is pretty much for me low tech. And so the technology, if people are trying to record stuff on their iPhones or trying to capture stuff into their computer, the problem is out of sight, out of conscious mind. And you got to have a lot of discipline to make sure you go in and clean that up, and you don't have a bunch of garbage, and stuff lying fallow in your digital world. Very easy for that to be very, so complex. In a way, because the digital world is so powerful and in a way so simple, it's very easy to overcomplicate it. Very easy to make it much more than you need. That's why once you get GTD, you can use any of this technology. You can use it really well. If you don't have it, everybody wants the new. Wow, where's the new app? Because I never made this app work, so the new app is going to do it for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, good luck. It won't work. Actually, a lot of people are going back to paper, especially if you have attention, challenges. ADD, ADHD people, oftentimes there are too many clicks. It's too frustrating to try to go into the digital world, whereas paper is right in front of you. So again, there's no better system than another. There's just whichever one you will use. So people often ask, what's the best tool? I say, what do you use right now to make a list? And whatever that is, that's probably the best tool.
What are the kind of most common mistakes you see with implementation of GTD and actually making that a habit in people's lives?
Well, each one of the first 4 steps of the 5-step process. First of all, a lot of people don't capture everything, so they don't trust any system. They don't trust the head, they don't trust their list. I'm of 2 minds there. One mind says, hey, just do a little bit of this, it'll help a little bit. Another one is, if you're not willing to do this totally, don't bother. It's too much work. Right? So you're not going to trust any system anyway, right? So that's the first thing, is people won't capture everything. The second place people fall off is they don't determine next actions, real specific next actions about stuff. Their lists become mom and bank and budget or whatever, and they keep looking at those, and they create more pressure than they relieve, because they're just reminding you of stuff you haven't decided exactly what to do about it yet, and they're making you feel more overwhelmed. So people oftentimes just will write stuff down, but they won't go through the clarification process of it. And then the third step is, even if they decided, okay, that's a phone call, but they don't write it in some place they trust they'll see when they have a phone in time, falls off the game. And the fourth one is, they may set all this up and get all inspired on a weekend and not do any kind of weekly reviews. The stuff gets out of date, they don't trust the system, so then they give it up and they fall off the wagon very fast. Good news is you can get back on this wagon very fast. Just start capturing, clarifying, organizing again. So it's not hard. It's just, but building that habit. Come on, it takes 2 years to learn the banjo, 2 years to learn to cook spaghetti. I don't know how long to learn how to be a good parent. I don't know how long to learn Dutch when I'm trying to do. Give me a lifetime, maybe. But anyway, it takes a couple of years to build even these simple little habits so that they're automatic. You can implement them immediately. It wouldn't take you but 10 seconds to write something down, decide the next action on it, park it on a list.
Right.
That's it. Right. But to make that something you couldn't stand not doing that, that's a habit. So if I told you, hey, Sky, I'm going to get back to you about that, you're going to see me pull this out right now and write it down, even though they're recording this. I've been talking, I've had 1,000 people in a room. I've stopped midstream because I saw something on a slide I needed to change, and I just need to make a note about it. So I didn't rip them off by having my brain have something start to spin around in there, distract me.
When we were talking earlier, you shared something which was actually quite nice. You were talking about the weekly review and this being a common thing, and you just touched on it there. People aren't doing the weekly review. And you were sharing that at one point in your life, you were doing the review 3 times a day because there was so much input coming in that was being captured. Just share some of that story with us.
Yeah, well, there was a time when, oh, golly, I can't remember everything that was going on, but I just had some major projects that were going on in 14 different directions. They were coming at me, and coming at and changing very fast, and new input was happening very fast. And I like the ability to truly focus on whatever I'm focused on. So when I'm doing work, I'm drafting a foreword to a book, or I'm writing a blog, or I need to run a spreadsheet about this, or whatever it is. When I'm focused on that, I don't want anything else on my mind. But as soon as I finish doing that, I need to look up and come up for air and look around and go, God, now what? And so how fast I can get back to the now what sometimes required me to be able to look at the whole game again, in a pretty significant way. For a while, I was maintaining it was a digital mind map that was kind of double entering a lot of things that were on my other lists, but I used that mind map to say, here's major stuff coming toward me. Here are the things that most are strategic for me that I need to make sure I'm focused on. Here's the thing I need to keep watching to make sure this thing goes on. And it was even a bigger lens than a meta lens on my system itself and the things that I wanted to be able to see. So as lazy as I am, I said, I need to get a quick map so I don't have to go through all my lists when I wanted to regroup and refocus. I just wanted to meta view quickly to look over the whole thing. That's really what I was meant by kind of some 2 or 3 times a day for a while. I was having to use that tool. Haven't needed to use that for a while because now I'm able to kind of step back and have a bit more of a not as fast changing professional context.
I think another thing from the conversation earlier that I captured in my mind was the point of sometimes you just want to have a day off and actually be present, say with family or some leisure activity, and GTD is designed that you can do that and actually come back to it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole. Frankly, you need to be present wherever you are. And sometimes that looks like spending time with your family. Sometimes it looks like taking a nap. Sometimes it looks like, running a 4-minute mile. Sometimes it looks like whatever. So it's just being able to be quiet or be present with whatever you're doing is going to allow you to experience that. And that doesn't mean you only want to be doing one kind of thing all the time. I think it's important for us to shift perspectives. So many times, if you have to have a vacation, you're probably not as relaxed as you ought to be, in your work. If you want to take a vacation to give you a new perspective on things, that's a great reason to unhook and get to another context.
Good. Thank you so much.
I've made a whole career out of 12 things.
I just have, I just want to share.
Well, 1 second. Can we do an ending to the?
Sure. What do you want?
Just thank you so much.
Okay.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
And also the beginning.
You want?
So.
Sorry, I thought you were cutting.
No, I am, but then there's also one full one.
Okay.
So I need
Okay.
one here with David.
Fine.
And thank you so much for having me.
And just a handshake, hello, and that's it? Okay.
Opening, closing, bumpers. Bumpers.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Into this one?
Bummer bumpers.
Yeah.
Into that camera, okay.
Okay, this week.
I'm here with David Allen, the master of productivity, the creator of the absolutely life-changing Getting Things Done system. David, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a
My
pleasure.
pleasure, Guy. Delighted to be here.
Thank you.
Ending.
Good.
Wait.
What do you want an ending? Just thank you so much, great conversation, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Just a closing.
Okay. David, thank you so much for talking to us. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
It's been fun, Sky.
Thank you so much.
Indeed.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just real quick.
Wish all those interviews were that short.
David, just a moment more, please. Just a real
Or do you want to keep this on?
yeah.
Of course.
If you're shooting now, is this the thing you want today? Or
No,
tomorrow?
no.
What's the bit that you want? Is already done?
I'll tell you later. I just want to share the context of the book that I'm writing,
Okay.
and also like you to inscribe
Sure.
the Bible for me.
Sure.
You good? Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Please talking to the mic, please.
Dick?
Hello.
Yeah. Count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Are we good?
Yes, I am rolling. Decent. Okay. Go.
So David, this is a book that is under the publishing process, and the context of this book is a very simple statement that people like to do business with who they know, like, and trust. And in today's day and age, it's very easy for people to come to know you through digital media and so on and so forth. And trust is either you're trustworthy or you're not. But the middle piece, do they like you? I don't see too many people working on that piece. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking and soul searching. And I found that, the people who I like are my favorite relatives or my favorite people. So I started doing a lot of research, situationally, what is it that they bring forward that I really, really like them. So this whole book is about, how can you model your favorite relatives as opposed to go and read books and so on and so forth. So, from being the master of productivity, the guru of productivity, and the go-to, getting things done system. Is there any message that you could give to people, who might be interested in figuring out the simple art of peer leadership by mastering this whole dimension of likability?
Well, I think you're right on about modeling. I think modeling is the best way to learn anything. So,
Right.
If I look back in my life, I say the people who made the biggest difference in my life were people who held an image of me bigger than I did and were willing to hold me to that. So I think they're absolutely, I'm not sure I'd be fascinated to read the book. I know authenticity is something that's absolutely critical for me to like somebody.
Right.
They need to be authentic.
Absolutely, yes.
Doesn't mean they have to be the same personality, doesn't mean anything, they need to be authentic. And I think they need to have the capability of liking
Right.
as well. And so I think that resonates, one way or the other, and willingness to listen and willingness to share and express themselves. So honesty and authenticity, it's kind of hard to be, how do you, we all know kind of what honesty means, but I think that absolutely has an awful lot to do with how productive you can be, especially if you're engaging with other people.
Right.
Is to be able to do that. I'm not the expert. I mean, emotional intelligence is a lot of, how do I understand how people feel? How do I make them feel? So a lot of things I think can contribute to that.
Right. And the basic tenet of this book is focus on the 200 top relationships and increase your likability index with them, and everything starts to flow from there.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely.
Thank you, David.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can have you inscribe this for me, it will be absolutely amazing.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Indeed.
Brilliant. And last is, we were a bunch of 10 people. So 10 of us got certified in Narita for the YPO CFF forum. So just a congratulations message for them will be absolutely brilliant.
Sure. Hey, congratulations to all of you who've just been certified for the CFF. YPO is great. I've done many things over the years with YPO. It was always fun to do and always highly constructive for the people that were engaged with it. So go forward,
Yeah.
and do good work.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Can we eat?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
By the way, Gautam and Rinkesh are supposed to be at the hotel, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure what our timing is going to be, but
No, we'll